Starting this video like I did once before on this Molasses Moon series, showing my Llewellyn's Daily Planetary Guide. This is what most astrologers use for just references as to where the planets are. I'm putting it back here so you can kind of see the size. I'll show you what it looks like inside. Fold it around back and show you today. Today is Tuesday, March 20th. I'm going to talk a little bit also about the new moon here. On the 22nd. This is somewhat continuing from video number 61, more directly than usual. Try to steady this for a minute so you can see what it says on today. Today being March 20th, Tuesday, 2012. It also happens to be the spring equinox and International Astrology Day. So this might be an appropriate time for me to be featuring a tiny bit more of astrological information. Had a few things in mind to maybe cover today. Again, I'm doing this at a time that my kitchen doesn't have really enough light to have the motion look more normal instead of kind of fuzzy at times. So, also video number 61 where I describe the 8 lunar phases that I work with. I stumbled around a little bit on that, made a few errors, but corrected them. And I'll also, haven't uploaded it yet, but I'm planning to finish a little project I did to write in the introduction to list each of the moon phases, so you'll have a more accurate written information. Also wanted to mention from yesterday that the astrologer that I took that class from was back in Portland in maybe 1970, 71. It was either 1970 or the early 70s, and in Portland, Oregon. Just a seminar held like on a weekend evening, I think. It was by an astrologer, Virginia Diane, who is very seasoned and well known, especially in the city of Portland. She has commanded a great degree of respect and was a practicing astrologer then at that time, but I'm not sure now. But it actually was going to do a Google on her name to see what might be going on. I haven't kept in touch with a lot of the Portland people. When I lived in Portland, I was actually instrumental in choosing the actual initiation time and launching Oregon Astrological Association. It was really kind of a fun deal. There were 5 of us, I think. Might have been a few more later, but I think the core was 5 or 7. Probably 5, because I think we fit in a regular booth in the IHOP in downtown Portland when the IHOP was still there, sitting kind of up on top of a little knoll downtown where you drove up on a little hill to their parking lot. I loved that place. I was really disappointed when it closed, but it was really neat because we got together. Normally I didn't get up very early. I just have always been a person that needs to sleep in the morning, which fits actually Aquarius rising and moon in Aquarius. But I ended up setting up the time for us to meet I don't know if it was 6 or 7 or something, but a lot earlier than I would normally ever agree to do a meeting, but to capture a certain cycle for initiating this thing. And several astrologers had tried to start an Oregon Astrological Association several times before that, even years before that, but none of them ever really took and maintained. And on this one, I remember no one else really felt they wanted to pick a date. They hadn't really been doing a lot of work or study in that area. And I had. That was one of the things that fascinated me the most, just the current times and, like, by the moment, what to do with each time or how to plan times for starting things. There was one thing I really wanted, was to have the planet Uranus, which rules astrology, very strong. And partly, too, it was because Uranus in Aquarius usually won't allow too much manipulation or forcing of something into any type of control or political use that gets too intense. It tends to maintain the integrity and the purpose and the honesty and the truth of the purpose. So I did pick a cycle on timing, time of day, the month, to mostly align with that, to make it work with free choice and resist anybody trying to control it too much. And there's a lot more to it, but I guess that's good enough of a nutshell. Wish I never even thought about trying to remember the names of them, because honestly I hadn't remembered or thought about mentioning that. But it was really kind of neat because it took hold, and we even had incorporation papers later, and picked a date and time to send the application for that, even to the minute of dropping it in the mailbox. It was kind of fun to do this with a group of other professional astrologers, especially ones that were more like rebels like me, and weren't too much into pushing or manipulating or officiating anything, or what do you call it? Making people abide by certain rules and require certification, and none of us, that didn't really go along with any of our ways of approaching life. So it was really kind of a neat time, a fun experience. So anyway, I just wanted to give credit to Virginia Diane for the seminar that I went to that introduced the 8 lunar phases. And the most important thing is the planetary rulership, because that gives you a lot more information. And I've worked with and watched these cycles for years, since then actually, and added my own information based on just observations and watching people. And I was a full-time practicing astrologer in Portland from 70 through 85, I think. I might have quit a little earlier than 85, I can't remember. But another thing I do want to mention, though, is that I quit doing charts at that time and have not picked that up again, doing professional consultations. I don't do that now. I basically don't have the time or the inclination. I just keep up with studying cycles all the time, what the planets are doing. Sometimes not religiously or in detail, but I basically know. This brings up another point too, though. As fascinating and helpful as astrology can be for timing, timing itself and cycles are so complex. At any moment there are several overlapping cycles occurring. And then you match those up with a person's chart. The cycles, or transits they call them out there, are affecting a person's chart, their natal chart. They're affecting everything that has a beginning, basically has an astrological chart. United States, the initiation of the our country has a chart, an astrological design, so to speak. And so you've got all these overlapping and interconnecting and affecting each other. So bottom line is always watch these things, and I might guide and direct to a degree, but all of us we're born with instinctual awareness of what all the planets and the sun and the moon are doing because they are affecting us. I think it's from a radiation type of effect. So bottom line is, if you are especially becoming sensitive to the present or the moment, you'll begin sensing different cycles and act accordingly, even though you might not know the moon, what phase it's in, or that it might be making a 90-degree aspect to Saturn from the Earth's perspective, or that, like on this new moon, for example, we not only have the sun and moon in conjunction from our perspective from Earth, which makes a new moon, and that occurs, actually, to give you the date, on the 22nd, Thursday, and it occurs astrological positions at 2 degrees Aries. But in this one, you not only have the moon and the sun together, but they're together real close to Mercury also, and the planet Uranus. All of those will be real close to that 2 degrees Aries point. Now that type of a new moon, when you've got Mercury and Uranus connected with it, is highly unusual and different, and all of that relates to the mind, and anything that would be initiated close to that time or born would have a real high level capacity, mental capacity. What would be like you might expect a person born with that chart, with the sun, the moon, Mercury and Uranus all conjunct, that you would certainly anticipate some type of genius. But with genius, sometimes you have other things that seem to be liabilities or weak points. Usually they aren't. They're just some type of support of the strong point. Okay, I jumped around a little bit, but not too bad. So I did want to at least touch base. The time, Mountain Daylight Time, for the new moon, to be precise, on Thursday is at 8:37 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. I might now and then, I always just, like I say, follow impulses and instincts on what I do. But as things come up, if I continue doing these videos, which are becoming sort of like a vlog, I guess, a video log, in addition to continuing the themes of Molasses Moon. So if I do, periodically I might interject a little astrological input. Just wait and see what happens. I take things one day at a time. That also is a Sagittarian trait. Playing it by ear, one day at a time. Anybody with real strong Sagittarius, and you can have that in other ways than being a sun sign. You could have Sag rising, you could have the moon there. You could have Jupiter at the midheaven like I do, or a real strong Jupiter presence, since Jupiter is basically the radiative energy that causes the Sagittarian qualities, or from which they, well, I'm not going to get into that. That gets a little bit more esoteric and technical, that isn't going to interest a lot of people. Also, the spring equinox, just while I'm mentioning cycles here, did occur also. They're saying it's today in my little astrology book, but in Colorado here, the exact spring equinox when the sun went into Aries was last night at 11:14 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So that was on March 19th, Monday, that we experienced the precise time of the equinox, the spring equinox. Okay, what next? I was relating to the current balsamic moon cycle, the 8th cycle in 8, right before the new moon being cycle number 1. And what I noticed today, I was doing some more editing on, I worked of the visceral history definition in that book. I'm working on that code through that particular book. And then when I'm finished with it, I'll upload that one again. So it'll be the same book, same Amazon product page. Basically the same story, same format and setup, except that the visceral history definition or code will be updated, and also the hyperlinks to my books on Amazon will be included. And I've balsamified, whatever you would call it, that hyperlinked list, so it's a little bit cleaner, more efficient. I just decided if people decide they want more of my books, when I set up that one on the 5 days free promotion, offering it free that many days, or can do 1 or 2 at a time, or 3, you can spread it out. My current thought is that I just might go ahead and do it at a 5-day stretch to see if I can build some momentum with it. So when people do get that book free, and 1,400 copies of Cola and Coca-Cola went out on my last offer through Amazon Select KDP of a free book promo. And to show you that book. I've shown it here before on other videos, but this is the book cover. Cola and Coca-Cola. That's kind of appropriate because that was one out of my, I have a total of 8 visceral histories, but there's one more that I still have to perfect and get ready for Kindle formatting and photos to go with it. I was happy that that was the one that took off more than any of my other books that I've ever put on a free promo, or that, like Myrtle's Ultimate Mystery, has sold on its own fairly well for several years, until I had a few people, one at a time, putting single-star reviews on there, ripping the book apart for various reasons. And I think it was a group working in concert over a period of time. They have to be careful because Amazon will catch these things. Computers are set up in different ways to try to catch people just trying to manipulate in this way sales or making lack of them. But after that, the fifth review over a period of, I think it was more than a year, might have been a year, pretty much cut the sales more than in half. But that's another story for another time maybe. But Cola and Coca-Cola is the story of my mom's, one of the prime events of her life, of starting her bakery in 1949 and 50. So I thought it was kind of neat that her story would be the one, because she so much wanted to help me with my books. As if you read any of them, you'll see here and there, Morning Comes, and she's in Molasses Moon in parts too, in a smaller way. She's in the biggest way that I've included my mom in my books is in Morning Comes. And sometimes I reread that one just because I want to feel her presence again and relive that history in the parts of it that were very satisfying. And now the parts that were painful aren't painful anymore, because I have my true mate, Tom, which is what I was looking for then. And I have a stable place to write. And I have Kindle. So all the things I was seeking then, now I have. So now I can just enjoy my mom's presence, and my brother and some of my nephews stepped in that one too. back to the editing now. I worked when I did a little bit of continued editing on my visceral history code today, using the balsamic moon phase, as I mentioned yesterday, making it easier to cut things that don't belong. What surprised me today is not only did I cut a few more, but today was the first time in a balsamic moon phase that I actually added some words here and there. And I was thinking this was kind of strange. But what I realized is that that does still go with balsamic, because those words were necessary. They clarified certain things that made the whole of what I was trying to say, even though it literally added, I think, 1 or 2 sentences to a small paragraph. And I've really been trying to get away from adding anything because I'm wanting to cut and clean up. But so I was real careful. I added the words, read it over very carefully each time I added one. But they wanted to go in there, and they worked. So if you're adding things and they feel right during a balsamic moon phase, you can feel, to a degree anyway, that you're probably not overdoing it. But I would be the best test, because a person with the Jupiter moon phase, the third one in the waxing growing cycle, that's the strongest push to expand, to develop, to add, to increase. That's actually the strongest push of the growing phase of the moon during that Jupiter between 3 and 4 day stretch. Also, Jupiter and Sagittarius rule publishing. So a lot of times in the past, I've experimented with trying to get attention or deal with publishing things during that Jupiter phase. But it's interesting that what becomes clearer and clearer all the time is that people have free choice, and they need to, they're supposed to. And I really don't want to manipulate that anyway, because it never works. Things just backfire. So the bottom line was still that the people that you're approaching have free choice, and they have their own agendas, their own lists, their own plans, their own needs. And sometimes it's just a fluke, especially in the publishing industry, with an unknown that has the wrong political viewpoints, the wrong style, just about the wrong everything. There's no way any cycle's going to work against that. But there were times that in my books that you'll see, if you ever read them, the ones the gem books that record some of this, there were some real interesting situations that occurred. That even though you know what happened in the long run, there's a lot to be learned, and a lot of entertainment still in that kind of history. It is history. It's the history of a writer like me in the publishing industry before the advent of Jeff Bezos, Amazon, and Kindle. Okay, where to go next? I did debate whether to upload video 61, because as I said, I stumbled around a little bit. But what came through also spontaneously here and there is important, I think, to share. And so I'll go ahead and upload it, because I couldn't repeat it. I might be able to improve this saying of the lunar phases, but that I'll be including, I haven't uploaded it yet, in the introduction. So that'll clarify and confirm all of it there. And then you can have the rest of it. And the spontaneity is still, it's just what's supposed to be. It's right. So one other thing I might cover today, as far as astrology is concerned, I'll mention something but then deal with that later. It'll take a little more time. When I mentioned that the new moon is in 3 degrees Aries, that's astrological. But when you look at astronomy, the signs are in a different location than they are in the way astrologers look at it. And there are a lot of reasons for that, pros and cons both ways. But that takes books even to explain or try to justify, or it's not a justification, but try to explain why astrologers use a different framework for the location of the 12 signs. I studied what's called a sidereal astrologer versus tropical. Tropical is the way used by most astrologers. Sidereal is a more like what astronomers use. To just know the difference is slight, but could be considered slight or great. I don't know. I don't think it's much. It's around 14 degrees, at least when I was studying sidereal astrology in the 70s. You'd have to go backwards in the zodiac about 14 degrees to get to the astronomy part, if you're looking at astrological books like I have here. So if it's 3 degrees Aries and I were to go back 14 degrees, I'd go into the sign behind Aries, which is Pisces. Although, now I'm trying to remember, 0 degrees Aries, I think that might be where they overlap. I'm not sure. There are just a few things here that, since I'm always following astrology and I don't really watch astronomy from the signs, the physical location of the planets is still the same. And when they're on the midheaven or on the horizon, the location's the same. It's just the degrees of the signs that are different from astrology to astronomy. Okay, the only other thing I want to touch base with today, and there's probably a reason for that because it seems to not connect, but yet I think it does. When I did video number 55, this comment came from John, and I was bringing that forward again in my Facebook page, so that's why it's coming into this current time frame. In video 55, I read the review that John Cassell, cohort friend, author, wrote on that book. And after reading that review, it sparked me to discuss a few things that I did in Portland, Oregon that was close to that time in the 70s. Close to the time. Close to the time since his career was in 25 years in police work, going from actually working as a policeman into getting his law degree and then working as a district attorney and the prosecuting attorney. And that whole career went 25 years, and now he's retired. So him reading the review and what he mentioned about my own history in there brought forth a couple of experiences, and one was, let's see, the test of faith. It was a retreat, right? I'm trying to figure out how that came in, but it was a retreat, a Catholic retreat up in the mountains in Colorado. If you want to know more about that story, I won't repeat what I said in video 55 of the Molasses Moon series, but go ahead and view that one if you want more detail. As far as the test of faith, we were in a retreat. It was in the mountains of Colorado. I think it was a couple days. It was on a weekend. It was at least a couple days, but it might have been 3. I'm not sure. But on one of the evenings, it was extremely cold in the winter. And up there, like I mentioned in that other video, the snow was deep enough that you can usually walk on the top of it because it was hard crust, frozen. But if you hit a spot where the crust breaks through, you can end up falling down into the snow over your head. And when you go up higher in the mountains than we already were, then it's literally life and death situation. They told us what they wanted to do was test our faith. And we were going to all go together, the whole group. And I don't remember if there were 20 or 30 people. We were going to go together with the conductors of the seminar, and they were various types of religious professional people, from priests to I don't know what all else, but we were going to all go together on this big long toboggan, take it up on top of this very, very high hill, up higher in the mountains, at night, and slide down the hill in the dark, in the cold. And they let us know that this was a very dangerous situation, and some of us could be hurt, possibly even killed. But what they were going to do is test our faith, that if we had a strong faith, that we would be okay and we'd be safe. And if we didn't, then we wouldn't. And it was all a free choice thing, that we didn't have to go if we didn't want to. But of course there was peer pressure there with the group. And when you're on a retreat like that, as you probably know, if you've gone to any events like this, especially in a religious situation, in that time I was still a very strong in my Catholic faith. And when I was in high school age, I had considered very seriously, instead of going to the local Florence High School, the public school, to go to the academy, the Catholic school in Canyon City, with the idea of that being preparation to become a nun. I didn't choose that path, and here I might tease you again and say I'm not going to explain why or how I made the choice and how I changed my mind. I didn't change anything about the strength of my faith then. It's just that I decided I wasn't ready at that time to take that path or that vocation. So I was still in the strong point of my faith then. I still have a very strong faith, but I walked away actually with the permission of the priest that was in charge of that retreat, Father Brown, in Fort Collins in early 70s. I walked away with his permission, and it was after this test of faith. Of course, I had a tremendous amount of faith, and I was terrified, and I really didn't want to do this, but I did trust in God. I still do, totally. Or whatever, this higher supreme being or beings. Now I'm leaving my thoughts open, but I still have a very strong faith in the spirit, in good, and in a higher consciousness. So I was going to go. I was ready and didn't want to be out in the cold. I hate the cold. I didn't want to go out in the dark and the cold. But I was ready to go because I trusted. And I don't think everybody did decide to go. I don't remember how many of us did. But we were all bundled up and had all of our supplies, and we were all together, ready to embark. And they went up to the front of the group and said, "We're not going to go." What we wanted to teach with this is that in a situation like this, even with priests in your own Catholic faith, you should say no. That you should not, you don't have to go that far to prove your faith. You aren't asked to do something like this by God. Well, that sort of made me feel like a fool. And it just was almost like a slap in the face. That just was a shock to me. And they said they don't want half-baked Catholics. And so to be a full-baked Catholic, wouldn't you have that kind of faith to do something like that? So basically to say it was very confusing to me. And it caused a lot of, I don't know what you'd call it, but it was not long after that I went and talked to Father Brown. And I don't know how the connections were made. I don't remember now. But there was something also in in the class talking about the infallibility of the Pope. I just don't remember all the connections now. But that to be a true Catholic, you did have to believe that the Pope was infallible in his choices and decisions, but maybe it was like he was the only one in the church that could actually ask something like this, and that other priests or even bishops or other religious figures in the church don't have that type of power. Like I said, I don't remember all the details, but I went to Father Brown not long after that and said I no longer believe in the infallibility of the Pope. I don't even know how I came to that other than I started studying philosophy, walked away from psychology and went into philosophy. Because in psychology, they had answers, or they had, not really, they diagnose an illness and give it a name and describe it, but they really didn't have a lot of actual cures as far as I could see. And when I took some philosophy classes, I saw they had more questions than answers. And at that point, that appealed to me. And that was one of the first things the first psychology professor or philosophy professor said, is that philosophy is searching and questioning. And they might have theories, and there are different schools of thought in philosophy. But the main essence of it is to ask questions and to search, not necessarily to come up with answers that everybody could accept. And that's the one thing, too, with philosophy. Everybody's always arguing these different types of theories about supposedly answering questions about reality and about why we're here and how we should behave. How we should behave, morality and ethics is called, I can't even remember the term for it. Anyway, that's probably enough. And how does this test of faith work in with astrology? About the only thing I can say is other experiences I've had in my life too. Have opened my mind to a degree that I'd say a lot of people think if you're an astrologer or you are practicing astrology, that you believe in it, that it's like a religion. It isn't. To me, it's more like a philosophy. I use it to do research and study and try to determine cause and effect based on more planetary patterns than signs, because the one link that is the same in astrology and astronomy is what the planets are doing in their relationship to the Earth by angles and locations. So I always look at that more strongly than I do the sign that they're in. There's another book, though, that did describe the geometry of meaning. And that does give a pretty good explanation of why astrologers and how any beginning point in a circle would relate to the meaning of Aries. And if you divide it into 12 and you start at like the eastern horizon and make a circle, that going every 30 degrees or 12 degrees would actually mathematically, geometrically, have the same meaning as the signs do. Anyway, that gets complex, probably doesn't make much sense. But there still is a connection between my faith and the fact that I'm just open in my religion and my spirituality. So even astrology for me is not a religion. If I one day see that there really is no cause and effect between the planetary patterns and motions and what we do, or that they have no effect on us, then it would be real easy to let it go. I mean, it's fascinating and fun, so it might be a tool and a game to play that I'd miss, but when you watch the moon and the tides, and how the moon, full moon, and the different phases affect people, oh, it does appear that there's something to it. And it's proven itself to me over and over again when I observe people, observe cycles, and then observe even what comes on the news during certain astrological cycles. It all tracks. So I'm ready to back off, pause on this one. Something came to mind of a thank you I'd like to do. I noticed that Joe Rafati, a friend of mine on Facebook and a relative, liked my video number 61, the recent one, most recent one, well enough, and he was born in 1931. So here's a man born in that time frame, very seasoned, an Italian, fits no stereotypes. He really liked that video, and he shared the link on his Facebook page. The only other time I've had people share the links I've done here on these videos on their own page has just been a couple times, I think. Actually, if any, I remember Jack Engelhard did share the links all the time when I was reading his book. But I'm not sure if anybody actually shared a link of my videos on their own page or anywhere else. So this, in any case, it was really an honor. It was a tremendous lift. So thank you, Joe Rafati. You're a sweetheart. You made more than my day. Take care, and we'll hope to see you again.